Hello everybody and welcome back here on BallinCraig Estate. The young man has just been down to the shop, fill up his truck with fuel and buy a few groceries that he's going to put here on the seat. Last time things weren't going too well. The combine had been sabotaged and there was quite a big expense coming out to pay for the new wiring. Now Mike the mechanic has been working really hard on trying to fix the combine. In fact, he's up at the farm just now, and the young man has received a bit of money in the meantime. One of the milk contracts have come in for about £1,200, and Helen has also paid him £500 for the feed and the pasture for the sheep. So at the end of the last episode, financially it was looking pretty dire, but things have looked up a little bit again. In fact, so much that the young man has already paid Mike for all of the arts. He's got his shopping now, can actually get a little bit of stuff back in the fridge, and he's taken a rather perhaps bold step of saying enough's enough of all this old clutter in the yard. As much as his farm is special to him and reminds him of his uncle, he also thinks that it's about time that some things started getting cleared away here. There's a lot of old timber and tires and things lying around that really isn't being used for anything at all. So he has phoned up a company that's going to come out and sort things out. While Mike has been working the last couple of days on the combine in here, still clanging away, he's lying somewhere in underneath the front of it, getting the last of the wires connected. He should be good to be able to get the combine tested and see if it'll start a little bit later on today. So this field has been done. They were in the middle of it at the end of the last episode, but the young man with a bit of help from Helen actually got everything sorted out. It's been baled up. Some of the bales got left down here on the farm, some of them got put up in the shed further up the road. So in here it is now getting quite full. And there is one concern, that is that if this combine ever gets going, there's also going to be a bunch of straw bales coming in. So the young man's going to have to think a little bit about where to put those. It might be possible. Not really. There's not much space in here. The sheep. Helen's actually started shearing a couple of the sheep, so there's a bit of a wool sitting in a box over there, but it's not really amounting to an awful lot. But the sheep are doing well, and harvest is basically ready if this combine can get going. But the young man's going to head in and put his shopping away and wait for these contractors to show up and see if he can get them started on clearing out a bit and get an estimate of what it's going to cost. So with the about 1,700 he'd made, he's spent about 500 on parts for the combine, and he spent about 100 for groceries and fuel for the truck. So he's going to put that away and wait for the contractors to arrive. So the contractors arrives not long after the young man has had himself a little snack. They brought a truck to be able to load some of the old rubbish into, and a rather large wheel loader. There's some chains and stuff inside the shovel so they can use it to lift things with. The young man explains to the lady who runs this contracting company that the first thing he'd really like is for this big pile of tires out here to get cleared away. She looks a little bit skeptical, given it's a rather narrow entrance. He said whether there's anything else he needs cleared away, because it might be a little bit fiddly to get around there. But the young man explains there's some old metal gates on the other side of the house that they can take up first as well. And well, anything along this old house here might actually improve Trevor's view out the windows here, because it is stacked up a little bit as well. But one of the things he really wants rid of as well is this stack of tires out in the field. But he's needing to go over and spend a bit of time with Mike to see how they're getting on with the combine. So he leaves the contractors to be getting on with their task. They've got his mobile phone number in case there's anything needed. So young man heads over to see how Mike's getting on while the contractors try and find their way into the field. It's a little bit tight for the truck to get around, but it does seem to manage to clear the corner to get out and start clearing off these tires. That is, once the wheel loader can make it through as well. Obviously these contractors are used to operating in quite narrow spaces, and seem to make it through into the sheep field without too much problems. And they're also used enough to work on farms that one of them quickly gets out and closes the gate to ensure that none of the sheep escape during the operation. So the contractors set to working, getting tires scooped up and cleared out. As the young man comes over, Mike pretty much grumbles and sweats underneath the combine. "How are you getting on, Mike?" "Why, alright," says Mike. "Actually, can you climb up? Give it a shot. I think I've just about put the last wires in." The young man's a little bit hesitant. Last time he was sitting in this cab, not very much happened at all. "Okay, Mike, if you think so." And suddenly, the engine simply roars to life. The young man can't help but laugh out. "Mike, you are an absolute miracle worker," he says. Mike grins as well, obviously relieved. He's put quite a lot of work into this. Well, just before you start shifting it too much, don't forget my van's right behind you." And the young man checks the mirrors quite gently. He just nudges it a little bit to confirm that it moves all right. "Oh, thank you, Mike," he says. That's all right," says Mike. He's in a hurry. He's already had a call. It's harvest season, and there's another piece of machinery that's broken down further north of the village, so he really has to get moving. The young man smiles and waves at Mike as he pulls out in the van. He's hugely relieved that they have a combine back up and running again. And Mike's obviously in a bit of a hurry, but I think he's glad as well that he did get it working for the young man. He seemed to have warmed up quite a bit to the young man over the last couple of months. It felt like their relationship was quite frosty at the beginning, but I think in many ways Mike was just a bit perhaps skeptical about an inexperienced young man coming in and starting to run a farm in the local area. Suddenly, the young man's got a lot to attend to. He wants to bring the combine out, probably actually want to leave the engine running a little bit, probably bring it out into the field that they've just cut, so that it can get a chance to run and warm up a bit. But everything seems to be working. The lights, the indicators, everything. He doesn't want to push it too hard straight away, but it is an enormous relief. He's never really operated this machine. Trevor's not about today. He's away at his work, so he's quite apprehensive about getting this thing out because, well, yeah, part of the reason the contractor say is obviously to clear out the yard, but there isn't an awful lot of space, although there seems to be enough space around here that you should be able to reverse it out and pull it into the field, so on he goes. It is an old machine, but the young man feels quite proud all of a sudden of this piece of machinery, which now seems to be purring and running without any problems at all. So the next bit really is he actually needs to get started on harvest because the grain's ready, and well, he's not quite sure. He thinks he's going to start with the field up here closer to the farm because that way at least he can hook a trailer up, get the grain loaded in to the grain trailer here without having to run too much back and forth. But first of all, he just needs to get that header trailer moved up closer to the field, so jumps into the massey with the cab and brings that out into the field. I'm going to have to close up the gates for a moment in order to be able to hook up the header trailer as well. The old header trailer is very tight up against the wall, but the young man does manage to get it hooked onto a hitch on the back of the massey eventually. He has had a little look at the header while it was sitting outside, and while it is a little bit rusty and everything, all the chain drives and everything on it seemed to be moving just fine, and the cutter bars were still intact. So without knowing much more about the combine and not really being able to afford like a full-on total renovation service on this thing, he decides that he should probably just give it a go. So he's going to bring it up to the smaller of the fields here first of all and see if he can get it hooked up onto the combine and then start getting some harvesting done. As he's bringing the combine up through the yard, he suddenly gets a bit worried. He realizes he hadn't checked with the contractors, and he just hopes that there isn't a truck coming flying around, but it looks like the loader is still working over in the yard, which probably means they're still busy putting tires into the truck, so that's all good. Makes a mental note he will have to go over and check how they're doing. But first, let's just see, it shouldn't take long to do the cut here really. The header mounts onto the combine quite easily actually. Although the equipment is old, it's been well maintained. And he connects up the PTO, and now it's really only a question of getting the Massey Ferguson out of the way with the trailer on, and harvest on BallinCraig Estate can get started. He's pulled up the Massey just on the side of the field. It's quite narrow around here right now, and he does take a little while just to check back over the PTO and this cutter. It does look a bit rusty, but everything looks intact. He's a little bit apprehensive. He kind of wished that Trevor would have been here when he was going to start doing this, but it's going to have to do, because he can't keep relying on Trevor for absolutely everything if he is to run this farm. And he gets the header going and very, very carefully starts waking his way up the edge of the field here. Things are happening. Swath is being dropped. And before we know it, the young man is harvesting his first grains on BallinCraig Estate ever. After the first round of the headland is almost complete, there's room for the young man to move the header trail over a bit so he can get the full edge of the field cut straight away. He's feeling proud and excited about working this new old machinery. The young man also notices that the tank in this thing seems to be filling up pretty quickly, and so he starts bringing out the pipe, realizing that he's soon gonna have to head down and get the grain trailer on one of the tractors. In fact, he decides that if he can make it to the end of this line here and then lift up the header, this is probably a better place where there's a little bit of room to maneuver. So he leaves the machinery running. He's still a little bit apprehensive about switching it off again after all the trouble that there's been with it. But he hurries down the edge of the field. The smell of the new cut straw is amazing. Just gotta hook off the bale trailer and get into the Massey and get the grain trailer hooked up before. Again, another piece of machinery that he hasn't used an awful lot. But before he does, realizing he has to probably maneuver a bit about the yard, he decides it might be a good time just to do a quick check on the contractors as well. The young man heads down. He can hear engines running and he just checks quickly. The sheep seems okay. Oh, the truck has moved. Oh, and the pile of tires have gone down quite a lot. Talks to the guy who's running the digger here, and he explains that they've kind of filled the truck by now. It's a little bit higgledy-piggledy with all these tires, but they're gonna get the first load taken out of the farm for safe disposal, environmentally friendly, and then they're gonna carry on. In the meanwhile, the truck's pulling out, full of old tires from the BallinCraig Estate farm. The young man closes up the gate so you can see the truck disappearing down the road, and gets his mind back to harvest time. He needs to get the grain trailer hauled out. It's sitting at a bit of a jaunty angle here. He might actually have to just quickly push the baler back a bit first. There isn't a lot of room around here, but it doesn't need to put the PTO on anything like that. It's just to get it a little bit further out of the way. Not much needed, but he just needs to get into the workshop, he reckons today, he hopes at least. So he just pushes it up a bit closer to the workshop door before getting the grain trailer connected. It's quite a large trailer. Suddenly this Massey Ferguson, the biggest tractor on the farm, doesn't feel so terribly big anymore. It's a bit of a tight turn, but he manages to get it out. And so now it's just straight up to the field to unload the first grain on the combine. Just hopes that the auger works as well. Sitting back over in the combine, he's delighted to see that the auger is working absolutely fine and emptying itself into the trailer without any problems, it seems, at all. There was a little bit of a squeak just as it started, but considering it hasn't moved for a while, he feels pretty good about it. He's quite impressed about the unload speed and everything, so he decides he might as well carry on with the harvesting of the barley, suddenly feeling more confident and more capable about the whole thing. Just as he's coming to the top of the field again, he is starting to get an orange light come on, indicating that the tank's getting very full. So he decides this is a good time to stop to get some more grain into the trailer. Now, there are no silos on BallinCraig, so there's no option really to store the grain other than to put a tarp over the trailer perhaps, but with another field ready further down, the young man does need to start thinking about where he's going to be selling the grain as well. So he decides that over the lunch break he's going to go in and make a couple of phone calls, but he reckons he can pretty much perhaps finish up this field, or at the very least fill the trailer if nothing else, before he breaks for lunch, and he'll see how the contractors are getting on at that point as well. As the young man swells with pride, feeling capable and positive about the fact that he's managed to run this beast of a machine and get the entire field harvested. He runs up. The only question now is whether he actually has room for all of the grain in the trailer here. So he's just got to keep a careful eye on it to make sure he doesn't start spilling grain, but he's pretty confident he should be able to fit it all in. And as the last grain runs out of the old combine, young man just navigates it up a bit so he can take the auger arm back down again. And he disengages the machine for now. There is another field to get harvested, just on the other side of these hedges, down across the main road. But right now, it's got a trailer full of barley. It's just about lunch break, so he needs to figure out what he's gonna do with this barley. So he heads down towards the house, through the narrow yard. Once again, he remembers he better make sure he leaves room for the contractors, even if it is blocking things up a bit here now. But he's going to head into the house, grab some lunch, and make a few phone calls about selling this grain. While the young man's having his lunch, the truck has returned from dropping off the first set of tires, and the contractors carry on with their clear-out job, making some extra space here on BallinCraig. After a bit of lunch, enjoying having a bit of fresh shopping and fruit back in the house, the young man feels greatly replenished. He can hear the truck from the contractors parked just outside, and the ladies explained to him they've got another full load of tires now. They actually managed to take a few of the ones. There were a couple over here on the pile before that were stacked up, and they managed to roll those over and use the chain on the digger to lift them up into the truck. So there's another pile ready for disposal. Then they're gonna come back, and then they're gonna start clearing out some of this wood and rubbish along this old house. But she says that the guy in the digger wouldn't mind having a word with the young man while she heads off. So he heads around to see what's going on. The young man walks up and asks the driver what's going on. The driver simply points out that while they were clearing, it wasn't really their fault, but they noticed some cracks in the wall in behind the tires over here. The young man notices they actually left the tire. Hey, he says. Oh, sorry, says the guy. We'll get that one cleared up in the next run, but as you might notice, there's some pretty grim cracks in the tires of that old house. I just thought I'd mention it to you because it looks like it hasn't really been used, but it looks like it could potentially cave in one of these days. The young man scratches his head. Thanks, he says. I don't know, this is just an empty old building. I guess in many ways we really ought to take it down or something at some point. The guy in the digger smiles and nods. Well, we do demolishing as well, he says. The young man grins. Anyway, I gotta make some money before I can hire you to start knocking down whole buildings, he says. I got some grain to sell. I gotta head up to our local grain merchant, and you guys okay here on the farm? I take it the truck will be back soon. Yes, says the driver. Don't worry about it. So the young man, having looked up and made a couple of phone calls over the lunch break, decides that he needs to head back up to the grain merchant and see if he can get a half decent price for his grain up there. this time of year where there's so much grain being sold. It's quite a competitive market, but without a silo or a spare shed even to dump the grain into, the young man doesn't really feel that he's got very many options other than to try and get it sold. So makes the run up the field. The Massey is going to have to work a little bit harder with all that grain in the back. He can feel that he's not quite used to handling this kind of weight on the road, but he is getting there. He is pulling just about up over the field. He's kind of glad that he isn't absolutely packed to the top this first load, but yeah, he's got to swing by his own buildings. Looking here, the yard's pretty messy as well, but it doesn't bother him as much because it's not directly in the way, in the driveway in the same way. But maybe one day when he gets a little bit more control over the finances, he might consider getting that yard cleared up as well. First of all, he's got to head up and see if it's going to be possible to sell some grain up here at the merchants. Of course there's a car coming just as he's needing to get across, but patience. He can hear somebody blasting the horn behind him, but frankly right now they're just going to have to wait. He waves apologetically at the queue of cars, and as he pulls in to the merchants, he's just going to stop and have a chat with them before he takes the grain on the ramp. He's not too familiar with exactly how they do the job here. It's a fairly short chat with the guy who runs the business here, Bolton Merchants as it's called. He simply rather matter-of-factly tells the young man that the current going rate is £428 a tonne. It's not quite as much as the young man had hoped for, but nonetheless it's gonna bring in some money, and they basically do the weigh-in directly on the scales here before and after the grain drop. So the owner quickly comes over and does that before the young man start tipping the trailer and bringing in a bit of money again to BallinCraig as he gets the check for £4,813. His chest swells with a bit of pride. It might not be much, but actually, right now, he's got more money in the account than when he started his adventure here on BallinCraig Estate. And he feels that that is actually quite a bit of an achievement. And there's still a whole nother field of grain that he needs to be cracking on with. But he has noticed that the weather forecast is starting to call for some rain later today, so he's not quite sure. Maybe he should try and get the straw baled up instead of trying to stretch himself too much. It might be better to wait and see how the weather behaves. Although right now it is lovely and clear, but the next field is further away, and it would probably be handy to wait until Trevor or Helen would be able to give him a hand, just bringing stuff down to the field and such like. As he's heading back, he is feeling good about himself. And although the barley price wasn't the best in the whole universe, he's quite pleased with the fact that he's finally made some money for this farm. As he's coming up the road, he noticed the flashers are on and the trucks are parked up. Oh no, he says, right here. Is he going to be able to get past me? Oh, I doubt it, he says, but he pulls up and sees they've certainly cleared off a whole bunch here. Wow. Oh, look at this space. He smiles and waves at the driver. Ha! I'll finally be able to get in here without feeling I'm constantly scraping against things, he smiles. But Is there any chance you guys could back up a bit so I could get my tractor in? The driver smiles and nods. Yep, no problem at all. And with the truck and the digger pulled out of the way, in towards the field, the young man pulls over to the other side, so they get a chance to get out of the field. He just needs to go down and get the baler and put the grain trail somewhere, but right now he better go and make sure that the contractors here are getting on okay. So with the tires cleared up out in the field and the worst bits are along the edge here, he asked them if they can also deal with the stuff that's kind of in the way, the old gates and stuff. There might be some scrap metal value in it that can be helped to offset the price a little bit. There's some extra gates here, an old ICB that's no longer used. These gates he might keep because they might be handy if they do need to move the sheep at any point. Really should close this door again, otherwise they can just walk straight through. Thankfully they haven't. The contractors agreed they'll carry on, and the young man is going to do a little bit of shuffling, but first he just takes a moment to reflect on the fact that farm's making a bit of money, and he's kind of feeling like today's a good day. He's clawing his way back from all the trouble that there has been. And that's where we're going to leave it for this episode. I hope you enjoy the series about the young man on BallinCraig Estate. If you do, please do consider hitting that like button, and if you don't follow Overcord Gaming as well, do consider subscribing as well. But for now, it's thank you very much from Overcord Gaming, and see you again soon.